Number one, the narrator indicates that Bella perceives Sanjay as. So we go to the first part of the passage and we see how does Bella perceive Sanjay. And right here, it says, she hated how at such times Sanjay, though otherwise masterful, just last week he had fought with a neighbor who had parked in their spot, making him remove his car, regressed into a teenagerish deference. Yes, Bishuda, you're right, Bishuda. I should be careful about what I say to my superior. So even though Sanjay is assertive in other situations with this guy, Bishu, he's not. He's deferential. And we see with choice A, deferential, especially about professional matters, like, how you speak to your boss or whatever. So in those lines, if this was a two-parter, that would be our evidence. But in those lines, we see that he is too deferential. He yields too readily. We don't see anything about him being not ambitious in his profession. The house thing hasn't even come up yet. It comes up later in the passage, and at no point is she upset. Well, I guess we don't need her to be upset, but at no point is she saying that, oh, he's very secretive about his plans, because he comes out and just says what the plans are. And again, this hasn't even come up yet in this part of the passage we've read. And then chores, I didn't see anything about chores or Bishu distracting him. So best answer here is A. 2, what's evidence for the idea that Bella is able to quickly communicate her feelings to Sanjay? So we look at this line set, 11 to 27, and right here it says, Bella looked at her husband. Why, she asked in wordless husband-wife code, didn't you tell me this great news? Why do I have to hear it from a stranger? Bishuda isn't a stranger, he coded back with a frown. So they're able to speak almost like with ESP, essentially. They're able to communicate to each other through body language and facial expressions and other things like that, gestures that allow them to communicate rapidly. And so looking at our lines here, that fits with choice C. All the others are not going to show that direct, instantaneous sort of communication. So 2 is C. 3, what do Bishu's remarks concerning Bella's cooking primarily serve to do? So we see this right here. First, we see in the previous paragraph that he's dropping in unannounced for dinner, which annoys Bella. And then he makes comments about her cooking. That fried fish was quite fine, but the cauliflower curry could have done with a little more coriander. She resented him too for continuing to it. Okay, so she's annoyed by his assumption that he can just come over anytime, and then when he does that, he critiques her food, which is like an extra level of rudeness here. So Bishu's remark concerning Bella's cooking primarily served to highlight the extent to which Bella depends on him for advice. No, she does not. She resents his advice. Demonstrate the freedom he feels in his friend's home. At first, this may not seem related, but if you think about it, yes, he feels free to come over when he wants for dinner, and then he feels free to critique the free food that he's just assuming he gets after he eats it. So he just feels very free. He feels very, at home, shall we say. So B is looking good. We don't really see anything here in his comments that he lacks refinement. So, yes, I think he burps at one point, but we're talking about his comments, his remarks, not what he does. Indicate that he has fond memories. It doesn't mention that at all. So 3 is B. 4, the comparison in lines 28 to 29, what effect does it have? So at this point, Sanjay tells Bella that we're getting a house, and then we have the comparison. The words swooshed around in Bella's head like wild birds. So just in this sentence alone, it might be unclear without more context whether this is a good or bad thing. We can see in the paragraph that getting a house is her dream. It's what she's always wanted. So from that context, we can tell that this is probably some mixture of surprise, happiness, excitement, etc. And that's what sort of the swoosh of wild birds represents. So hinting at Bella's excitement at the prospect of living in the countryside. Be careful. Yes, I think she is excited, but it's not about living in the countryside. It's the house specifically. Conveying Bella's immediate suspicion of Bishu's motives, no, too negative. Anxiety, no, too negative. Highlight the intensity of Bella's unexpected joy. Yeah, this is a surprise. She's really happy because she's always wanted a house. So the birds swooshing around her in her head are all sort of the fluttering of her happy emotions. So 4 is D. 5, it can reasonably be inferred from the passage that Bella's initial thoughts about Sanjay's announcement are prompted by. So here we have, as we saw for the previous question, the announcement. And here are her initial thoughts. And what she thinks about is experiences with her father. And this is perhaps why she wants the house, is because she wants to recreate these memories or relive them in some way. So memories of a cherished time in the past, yeah, with her father in the house that she lived in at some point. Knowledge that her father would approve of her owning house. I mean, I'm sure he would, but it doesn't specifically say that. Longing to return to the security of her childhood. It doesn't specifically say she feels secure. It's just the specific memory in this house with her father. So I think, notice A as a more general answer is going to win out here compared to a choice like C, which is much more specific, and even B, making specific claims about what's in that paragraph that's actually not quite explicitly expressed. And then D is just totally the wrong direction. So yeah, best answer here is A. Number 6, 37, unreasonable. She hadn't told Sanjay because it was an unreasonable longing, with her earning only minimum wage and loans, so many of them. So by unreasonable longing, it's hard not to use the word that ends up being the answer here, but when I did this one the first time, I thought of the word unrealistic, right? They don't have enough money, so this is just like a dream. It's a fantasy. So something like unrealistic, irrational, fantastical, something like that. And indeed, when we go to the choices, we see unrealistic. Looking at the others, just to run through them, it was an excessive longing. It's not excessive in the sense that it's too much. It's just not realistic. Like it's a perfectly reasonable thing to want. It's just, given their circumstances, it's not something they can afford or that would be realistic for them to afford. So excessive's not quite, it's in the right direction. It's just not quite as good as something like unrealistic. And then moody and unusual don't really work here. A moody longing and unusual longing. Again, with D, it's not really unusual. It seems pretty standard and typical. It's just not realistic given their circumstances. So best answer for 6 is B. 7, why does Bella object to the plan of buying a house? So she really wants the house. But at the same time, she knows that ultimately they can't afford it. And so we go back to the previous lines that we used for the previous question. And basically says here, it's an unreasonable longing. She also says here, we can't afford it. So even though she wants it, she's realistic and she says, no, we don't have the money. So that's why she objects. And so that gets us choice D. 8 and 9. Can reasonably be inferred from the passage that Sanjay and Bishu believe their chances of purchasing a house will be helped by. So 55 to 71, here to here. What will help their chances of getting the house? And so as we read these lines may jump out to us. Negotiate with the realtor who is known to Bishu and bring down the price. Get the loan. Thank goodness Bishu knew an agent because otherwise they wouldn't qualify. So this is an important piece of what's going to get them the house. Bishu knows the agent, the loan agent, and therefore they think will give them a better chance at getting that loan. So what's going to improve their chances of getting the house is that their willingness to make repairs to the house. Now, they're going to make repairs to the house after they buy it so that they can rent it. So this is after they actually already have the house, and the question is asking what's going to get them the house in the first place. Strength of the real estate market doesn't really specifically mention that, nor do I think that would help them get the house. If anything, side note, that would make it harder. But in any event, yeah. They do mention here that property values increase fast, but again, this is after they have the house. We're looking for what's going to help them get the house in the first place. Yes, Bishu's connections within the local business community, that's his connections to that agent. That looks good. They mentioned that they used to be political leaders, but they don't specifically say here that those skills will help them get the house. So I like C. What lines did I use? I used these lines right here. So that's 61 to 66. So 8 is C and 9 is B. 10, what is the main purpose of the last paragraph of the passage? So we go to the last paragraph right here. And we see Bella sort of thinking through how she can make the dream a reality, or at least how she'd be able to buy out Bishu so that the house is 100% hers. So she's kind of thinking about, okay, I can take a late shift, I can save, blah, blah, blah. So it's all sort of walking through her plan. How is she going to get this house to be hers and her husband's and cut Bishu out, essentially? So looking at our choices here, I like D, outline Bella's emerging strategy for achieving her dream to live in her own house. Yep, she's going to get a job, she's going to save. That's her emerging strategy. Looking at the others, it's not preoccupied with her thoughts, keeping her from excitement. No, she's thinking about her plan. Doesn't talk really about costly luxuries here, nor a concrete example, I'd say. Nor is this the main purpose anyway. To explain why Bella's resentment begins to... No, like, this is just not anything about Bishu. It's about her plans, about how eventually they can buy out Bishu. So 10 is D.